Locked, my keys are lost, I'm reeking of beer. Well, I'm not fussed, no, I've had a good night. The cheap drinks, the good friends, the bright lights. I've been out here living my nightlife. The whole time you haven't crossed my mind. And my friends said you weren't the right type. And you've made it pretty clear that right. Tomorrow's headspins be alright. Cause I'm starting a new chapter. I've had enough, yeah, been enough. Yeah, I've had enough, I've had enough. Yeah, been enough. Yeah, I've had you wanted, I've had enough. Yeah, been enough. Yeah, I've had enough. I've had enough. Yeah, been enough.
Good morning, India. We are back in Hungary for the European Ultimate Championships 2019 edition, bringing you action. First game in the Monday morning, 9:15 local time. Action from the women's division. We're in women's Pool B. Action here between Switzerland and black and Poland in the red and white. Benji Rees here with you for this game, to be joined forthwith by Joanna Hamer. And it's an honour to be underway in Hungary as this pool from Poland is going to sail out of this near sideline. Olivia Hauser is going to pick the disc up for Switzerland to begin things up. She's going to walk it to the brick mark. Looks like a zone from the pole. Speaking to the Swiss coach Derek Gottlieb before the game, he said he was he'd be quite happy with a zone to come out. There's not quite the wind that we had yesterday, and they're a team that likes to have this quick disc movement. So playing a zone doesn't necessarily play against their style. This front three very spread out. You see Hauser faking, trying to manipulate that line, find a way through, and just popping into the cup is Harms. Really just grinding it into the teeth of this cup. Fakes the overhead, fakes it around, and does take it at the second time of asking. Continuation swinging across the pitch. Now they're redirecting traffic back towards this near side. Nice around break there. Finally working it through, finds Maya. Moving the disc very quickly. Very comfortable with this style of play, the Swiss. Hauser's got the disc right on the end zone line now, doesn't think about forcing it in, instead just gonna take a bit of time, reset. The Swiss transition into an end zone offense as the Poles now go one-on-one defensively. There's an up line there, doesn't like it, still count begins to rise. Low catch, doesn't quite stick in there. Ground stripped herself a little bit on the landing. So after looking so confident against that zone, they just crumble a little bit under the tight one-on-one coverage, and now the Poles have a chance to break to start this game, swinging the disc to begin the possession. Golostiza swings around the back. There's an underneath pass that goes to Popek. And looking down line, it's overthrown, and there's a Swiss defender just waiting, and they're getting the disc moving quickly, not giving a chance to get this Polish zone set back up, and they're actually just going to stick in one-on-one coverage. Hauser finds an option on this near sideline. Continuation now. Niederhauser has it, looking desperately for a reset, and now just going to squeeze it into that front cone. Coming free is the number 14 shirt of Isabel Götzinger. And after looking very confident against the zone, they turned it, but the Poles couldn't do anything with it, and they work it down against that one-on-one coverage from the Polish defense to take a 1-0 lead in this game. Both of these teams played 2 games yesterday. They've both played against Russia and Sweden. Both took a loss to Russia. Polish women went down 15-9 in their first game of the day, 9:15 yesterday morning. Whereas yesterday afternoon, the Swiss had a tighter affair, but still came out on the wrong end, 13-11. Whereas they had differing results against, they had similar results against Sweden as well, both taking a win there. Swiss grounded out in Universe 14-13, where it was a little more comfortable for the Poles, winning 15-12. So this game could really be anyone's to take, and winner would take second place in this pool. Under the format here, the top 2 teams in the pool go through to power pools, as in addition with the 2 best third place teams. Going to see the first Polish O-line of the game. The ball rolls a little bit, but is eventually fielded. And Gav Lukowska finds an option downfield in Baim. That throw is a little bit too hot to handle for Dull. Break chance for Switzerland. Taking a swing. Oh, and overthrowing the intended target. Looking for Windler. Wronska. Looks deep. Dull streaking down that far sideline. Perfect put, right on the money. Really leading the receiver into space. The deep defender tried to peel off, but couldn't quite get there in time. And 2 points so far in 2 holds. 1-1 we are. Talking about the format with the top 2 teams and the 2 best third place teams going into power pools. So there'll be 2 top power pools of 5 and then a lower pool of 5. And then just because you're lower in the lower pool doesn't mean you're out of the bracket. Everyone except the bottom team in that lower pool has a chance to progress into the bracket through a pre-quarter round. Top 2 teams in the power pools going, top 3 teams going straight through to quarterfinals, and then the bottom 2 in each pool will have a crossover with the lower pool. So not that this game doesn't matter, obviously you're at a European Championship, every game matters, you always want to win, but a loss here isn't necessarily devastating. You can bounce back and find your way into the bracket. One of the quirks of this format. Speaking to Swish coach Derek Gottlieb before the game, saying, obviously we're going to try our best, we're going to try and win, but we're going to maybe open things up a little bit more, play with some freedom that later on in the tournament you might play a little bit tighter lines, especially in a long tournament in hot weather. You need to make sure that you're really using the full depth of your roster. So the Poles come zone once more, and Hauser doing a lot of the handling work at the back, moving downfield, looking very comfortable against this zone. Harms pops it forward to Hauser. Beautiful swing into the middle of the pitch. Continuation. Göttinger has it on the end zone line. Dishes it back. Cyril finds Lenderman. Looking into the end zone, trying to get cuts going. A monster foot block! Wow, what a play, and going coast to coast as well, taking off deep, not in any mood to hang about. The Poles with a great break opportunity. Short field now with Marek. Disc on the near sideline. Shot into the end zone for the goal, and the Poles draw first blood, breaking the Swiss to take a 2-1 lead. A D-line offense was merciless, looked in fine form early. And this is the key play here. Just a big foot block, read the release point and got a foot right in the way. Fantastic play from the Poles. So first blood goes to the women in white. Still very early on in this game. Number 4, Karolina Ryniak, who got that big foot block, generated the turn. So the Swiss now down 2-1, coming back against this Polish zone. This is the slightly more difficult direction to work in, but they're looking pretty assured so far. Hauser's always happy to have the disc in her hands and go every under if she needs to. You see, they're always trying to look to get the disc back into her hands, following the play against this zone. Happy to take plenty of touches. Faking a high release now, showing the option through the cup. Really happy to use every available centimetre on this near sideline. Hauser trying to find a way around and through, everything coming in very tight, and that allows one to sneak behind. Nice toe in on the sideline by Cyril, shooting into the end zone and mopped up by Dool. Good thing it was the intended target. Dool got there first, and a nice slap of hands absorbed the contact. Good to see spirit high early on in this game. I thought it was good, but Dool had other ideas, snatching that one away. So another break chance now for Poland. Kanapik dishing the disc off around, looking for Dool. It's going to be applying her trade on the Eurostars tour this year. Polish offense trying to be slow and methodical. They're not really gaining a huge amount of ground, just happy to reset between the handlers until that happens. Now breaking towards the far sideline. Dool makes the catch with the right hand, fakes the flick, goes for the big backhand deep. Looking for Lakomska over Olivia Hauser. Another break for Poland. And early on in this game, looking like they're in control. A couple of great defensive plays from the Poles, getting them the discs. And they've been able to convert these past 2 points, open up a couple of goals lead. 3-1 the current score. You see something a lot of these teams are doing is immediately heading into the shade. It's very hot out here at the moment. Temperature's going to be in the high 20s, even in the 30s all week here. And even though this is the first game of the day, only about 9:30 local time, it's still an awful lot to deal with, especially on this surface where those black rubber crumb pellets absorb all the heat and it really radiates off the surface. It's already 28 degrees out there. Get as high as 36 today. Throws a little bit overcooked. Maybe got a handle on it, just could only tip it forward. Another break chance here for Poland. You can hear Coach Gottlieb on the sideline, barking instructions to his charges. Poland looking around the back and a drop underneath. It's going to give the disc back to Switzerland. It's going to be a brief stoppage here. Maybe a marking infraction, perhaps. Bit more of a breeze coming across the field now, which is welcome relief against this baking pure sun. Lead throw really well caught, going to ground by Lehmann, and maybe landed a bit heavily. Has to take an injury sub. It's a great catch by Lehmann, keeping it alive when it looked like it might have been overthrown. Good to see able to walk off under her own power. We're just rotating that shoulder, maybe stick a bit of a bump when she landed. It was a fantastic play to keep it alive, and they're going to sub in Veronique Meyer. Sofia Baim on the mark. Up line cut goes, tries to isolate the reset. Very good active mark, staying right on the balls of the feet, getting around, making the disc difficult, and sliding catch, going to grab, but making the grab. Lastufka keeps it alive for Switzerland. Getting back on the board, 3-2, 28-year-old, originally from the USA, playing with the Swiss team now and doing an excellent job, closing the deficit to just 3-2. And delighted to be joined, despite the best efforts of the Dure transport system, by Jo Hamer.
Hello, thanks for starting without me.
Well, I tried to get all the players to wait, but they wouldn't. Very rude, if you ask me.
So what's the story of this game so far?
Poland up a couple of breaks, leading 3-2 at the moment. A couple of big defensive plays. A nice snatch away in the end zone from Dul. There was a huge foot block as well from Karolina Ryniak, which thwarted Switzerland's red zone offense. A lot of zone being played by the Poles, and the Swiss offense is pretty happy with that, but just when they get near the end zone, they've struggled a little bit with the lack of space, and the Polish D-line offense has been pretty efficient in converting those break opportunities. So the pull is going to tail off out of the sideline. Bambua Dida brings the disc in at the brick mark. Coach Mateusz Kosmowski in front of us, giving instructions to his Polish team. Disc swings towards the far sideline, Meyer. And finds it back in the center to Bambua Dida. Happy swinging around the back. The handler marks from this Swiss side sagging off into the lane, just trying to stop downfield movement. Happy to let them play between the handlers, try and get a short field turn. They're still only at about the brick mark, and finally getting an inside-out throw to Dul. He's had a fantastic backhand, but this time with the flick, can she read it? Just went over the head a bit of Tatai.
And it seems like the wind doesn't seem as strong as yesterday when we saw the Polish mixed team play on this same pitch, but it does seem to be going in essentially the same direction, which is towards the corner where the disc is being pulled in right now. So from left to right with the camera, and then slightly towards the camera as well. That seems to be the sort of line that everything's being pushed towards.
So we'll see if Switzerland can get a break back. Just about gets that sneaking behind the hands of Dul to find Chambord. And now the Swiss are looking deep. A bit of a misread, got too far underneath the disc did Windler, and there was a collision with the Polish defender. I think she has to take an injury sub as well. Still very early on in this game, but it's the second time we've seen a Swiss player have to come off injured. Obviously in this hot weather, especially on this surface, if there's anything you're not sure about, you're probably going to take it off, get a time in the shade, especially early on in the week. The worst thing you want to do is stay out there with a niggle and aggravate some sort of injury that could really harm you when it gets into bracket play.
And I think that either one or both of these teams might have another game today as well in the women's pools. Some teams had 2 games yesterday, some teams had 1 game yesterday, and then some teams will have 2 games today as well. So if you've got a 9 a.m. game and then 1 later in the day, you might want to rest any injuries to prepare yourself to be able to play later in the afternoon.
Yeah, so this is the last pool game for both these sides, but they will have a power pool or a lower pool matchup later on in the day, depending who they face. Obviously depends on the result of this game. So subbing in off the injury and maintaining possession with an uncontested foul is Cyril, and straight in and out of the hands of Weideger. So the Polish O-line gets the disc back, and they have it on the far sideline with Mella. Bambua Dida now in the middle, little high release backhand. Went to Kosbuk. Kronska. Now finds Duel. And space right past the bidding defender. Tatai maintains possession. Was a nice effort from Lutzman. Irish offense looking a little bit stagnant, swinging around the back until they can get some more downfield movement. Reset goes back to Vonska. Good use isolating that break side. Hotzbüch makes the catch. Underneath cut comes Boehm, has it, travel calls, resets her feet. Has the disc back to Bamboo with Nida. Very impressed with the patience of this Polish offense. It'll lead throw out into space right on the end zone line. Not quite in just yet. Tatai dishes it back off to Wronska, and the cut comes up line from Bamboo Adida. Very calm, assured possession that from the Poles, and they reopen a 2-point lead at 4-2.
Yeah, really nice calm possession down the field there from the Polish. I think these zone looks have probably been quite interesting throughout this game. It's holding the zone all the way into the end zone line. We saw quite a lot of that yesterday as well. At times it can be really effective, especially if you're going to sort of goaltend and mark out that front of the end zone line and stop players from hitting that. But if the throwers are able to find a way around that goaltending and throw slightly deeper into the end zone like we saw there, it can be a really effective way of getting past that zone.
That's the thing, obviously the line, you only need to get it to the front of the end zone to score, but if you can use that full depth of the end zone, just give yourself more space to play with, which is especially important as you get into the red zone and the field really begins to shrink. There was an interesting study I remember a fair few years ago, actually. I think it was based around the 2012 USA Next Gen Tour, where they looked at how likely to score you were based on the position of the disc, and it turned out there was a period, like if you got very close to the end zone, your chances of scoring actually went down when you struggled from a lack of space.
Really interesting study. It's nice to see more statistics coming out about Ultimate, and it'd also be interesting to see, I believe the Next Gen Tour was only men's Ultimate, is that right? So
yes, so it'd be great to see how that changes in the women's or mixed divisions.
Yeah, definitely.
So working very comfortably against this Polish zone, the Swiss offense, but we've seen this a couple of times, them stagnate a little bit when they get into the red zone. That's a fantastic find, swinging around to find the wide open Hauser, and cool as you like, into the front of the end zone for the Swiss. Very confident point that.
And the faster your O-line can hold, the more confidence you give your D-line there as well. I think a swift hold is the best that you can ask for from your O-line. Make the Polish D-line feel like they didn't really get a chance to have a look in there, and make your D-line feel like they get to have another chance right away to get a break.
And especially as well, just gives you an extra time to spend in the shade, out of the sun.
What little shade there is on this pitch. Yeah, we've seen most teams try to get under the bleachers on the far side for some of their timeouts or half times, but there's really not much shade out here on pitch number 2, particularly as you mentioned, the turf itself is very hot. We've had players with black boots complaining that their feet are actually too hot inside their boots.
Yeah, I've taken the executive decision to rock the flip-flops this week, but certainly, especially as it almost seems to cook during the day, then by the time you get to midday or whatever, you can't go on it in bare feet. It's just too hot to handle, or footle. So 4-3 the current score in this women's Pool B matchup at the European Ultimate Championships from Dior in Hungary. Rolling backhand pull, fielded on the hop by the Poles, and a straight run through D. That's why you've got to chase down the pull. Now Stufka gets in there, and now the Swiss D-line running quickly. Phoebe Chambord has it, finds Linzmann, looking at the end zone, getting it backwards, very comfortable, using those yards to get the disc moving, and Windler makes the catch at the front of the end zone. The Swiss on one of their breaks back, and now we're knotted up at 4 apiece.
Yeah, great energy on that defense there to get that run through D from the Swiss team. That was, I believe, number 27, Erika Lastufka, who's one of the resident non-citizens on this Swiss roster, originally from the USA. Looking down the roster, there's looks like a few resident non-citizens and Ultimate community members, and I think that's quite common on the Swiss squads because Switzerland is a very international country. A lot of people come there from abroad. Speaking with the Swiss mixed team earlier today, and they were saying that they have members on their team who speak every one of the official languages of Switzerland. So Swiss teams often very international, bringing a lot of different cultures together, a lot of different national backgrounds together, but really gelling into one unit as a national team for Switzerland.
And one of the things that's interesting is obviously is when you bring people in from various different countries as well, you get a different style, you get a very different style of play, so you can kind of integrate that into your style a little bit more. Something that I know that this Swiss women's side likes to do is they really value a lot of quick disc movement that you see a lot out of the Pacific Northwest in the States, for example. So here's the Polish O-line working against the wind. Just whipping up a little bit more, and I must say a breeze is a little bit welcome. Ever so slightly cooling. Bamboo Wadida. Using the full width of the pitch right the way towards that far sideline, just about sneaks that one past the defender. You can see telling the downfield players to spread out, find spaces, throw pops up, but it goes over the hand of the bidding defender. Transition now into single coverage, very smoothly done, but Bamboo Wadida gets space up line. There's no one coming to poach off, and she's got all the time in the world to snag that in with the left hand, and they reopen their advantage, 5-4 to Poland.
Yeah, great upwind throws in that point. A few of them hung a bit high, but were fielded well. I think the Swiss zone looked great, really good there, and I think it's interesting to contrast. If you look at the zone that the Swiss put on in that upwind point for Poland versus the zone that Poland had put on in the downwind point for Switzerland, you'll notice that the Swiss zone, through which the Polish were trying to go upwind, had a lot more players around the disc. They had about a 3-person cup, and then a few players match marking the handlers, and that's a really smart move because you know the long discs are less likely to come off upwind. You want to put the pressure there around the handlers, whereas the Polish zone that was on the Swiss team that was going into the wind only had a 3-person cup and many more people downfield to defend against those longer throws. As we see this beautiful throw go up into the end zone, weighted really well against the wind, just sits out for her to catch it.
Nice, comfortable offense there for the Poles. 5-4 up in this game. Game being played at a very quick pace, which is good to see that these teams have found a little bit of form. Obviously now with a couple of games under their belt, you're more into the flow, more into your system. Here's Hauser. We'll see with the disc in her hands a lot. See, really using those fakes to space apart that front line of defenders. And Heistel eventually takes a reset behind. And now running through this zone, getting the disc moving quickly, and they cannot stop the jailbreak, can the Poles? Eventually, Cyril gets the dish for the goal. It took them a bit of a time to get past that front line, but once they did, they motored away.
Definitely. I think, as you mentioned, we saw maybe one disc possession with quite a high stall count there, and I think there's kind of two different handler philosophies in a zone. One is catch the disc, have a look upfield, see if you can get anything through there, take your time and then make a swing. Or there's the moving the handler motion as quickly as you can, just tiring out the cup and then seeing if you can break through. And I quite liked, it seemed like the Swiss did a bit of both in that point. A couple of very quick passes, a couple of holding on to it for a bit. With the experience of handlers that they've got, they can do whatever approach they like and it'll work.
So it's interesting to see how teams try to break down the zone. Do you just get those little inside crashes? Do you try and swing around it? Do you try and go through that? Or maybe the wind is up, but it's not hugely strong. It's, I would say, if you're well practiced at it and well versed, the overheads are not necessarily unthrowable in this wind. It's always interesting to see how different teams attack it. You may see two teams in exactly the same position attack it in different ways. I always like the overheads, but then obviously as a commentator I always want to see exciting, spicy ultimate.
And if your overhead doesn't come off, then your team is potentially a bit more upset with you than if you tried a regular backhand or forehand.
Yeah, I found that, which I think is grossly unfair. So here's Kotzbuch. Does a good job of finding the poach player, Gavrilowska. Gavrilowska has it back now. Shooting for the end zone. It's a big bid. What a grab that is. Thought it was overthrown, and it looks like from a head in the hands, Gavlikovska did as well. It might be a stoppage here, though.
Get to see that replay and have a look at that grab one more time.
Does really well to get there from Kostic. But maybe just lost the disc on the landing.
From our perspective, it looked like her knees hit first, which were quite clearly in bounds. I'm not sure if the discussion on the pitch is whether the disc was in or out, or if there was another call potentially.
We do have the little replay screen available if the players want to have a look, but at the moment they're just happy to contest it and send it back. Obviously, one of the little appendices of the rules, if technology is available, you are allowed to use it, providing it doesn't unduly delay the game. So it's one of those things where you need to kind of get on it relatively quickly to make sure that calls don't drag on.
And I believe it's also up to the players on the pitch to ask for it. So some of the sideline players have come over and had a look, but because the players on the pitch haven't actively requested their input, they can't actively call out onto the pitch to grab their attention in a timeout call from Poland.
Yeah, Bambu Wadida not really enjoying what she seed. What she seed? That's not a word. What she saw downfield. I mean, seed is a word, but not in that context. Not really enjoying what she looked like downfield. The end zone offense got a bit cluttered and a bit muddled, and just taking the time out here to take a breath and reset.
Something quite interesting here that I think is a challenge for the Polish team is the players on the sideline who've seen the replay and know that that disc was in. If it was an active out call that was what called that disc back, those teammates, I think the wise thing to do is to sort of move on and not mention that that call was in, because you can get frustrated and caught up thinking, oh, we should have scored this goal already. But actually the most important thing is, what do we do now? How do we move on to finish scoring this point from the run zone? So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the team approaches this from a mental toughness standpoint. We have scored that goal potentially already, but actually we're just going to go score it again.
You see players bringing umbrellas onto the shield, onto the field. What is with my words today?
Umbrellas are a shield in a way.
Yes, that's what I was
shield.
going for. Yeah, just shielding themselves from the sun. And teams have 2 timeouts to use per half, so still 5-all, getting quite late in this half, haven't used one yet, so now's a good time just to use it, just to take a breath, make sure you can get a play set up. And it looks like they're spreading players all the way around this end zone, so getting isolations in every space, trying to punish any potential poach. Might be a bit harder in the wind, but it has dropped a little bit, so they can maybe get away with it. We'll see what they choose to do when the disc is checked back in. Interesting how the Swiss defend this.
It looks like they're coming back out with a similar zone look. So 3 people around the disc and leaving the 2 reset handlers completely open.
And taking those reset handlers, getting the disc moving quickly. Not in any mood to hang about off the timeout, the Poles. Doing a very good job of just getting set back into their normal zone offense. Downfield available. Not quite into the end zone, but dished in from Kostic.
And a wonderful layout D attempt there from the Swiss defender. They have to sort of go for that at that point, even though you think you might not reach it. You want to know that you gave 100% there on that end zone line, trying to stop that goal.
So the valiant effort comes just shy in the Poles. Reopen that 1-point advantage. 6-5, very tight in the early stages. The Poles got a couple of breaks. The Swiss have earned 1 back, but they're still trading up.
And also great to see the Swiss with a lot of, the Poles with a lot of great swinging around the back. And with the slight crosswind that we have here, those swings coming towards the camera, those backhand swings, you have to keep them really high, otherwise the wind will push them down and drop them. And the Polish handler's doing a great job of just instinctively recognizing the direction of the wind, keeping those backhands high, and then when they're throwing the forehands into the wind, keeping them low. We saw yesterday a lot of swings going awry because the wind really catches them. If you don't remember whether you're going into the wind or with the wind on those crosswind swings, but seeing the Polish handlers there, no problem, high release backhand around swings, getting the disc where they want it to be.
And I really enjoyed as well when the swings go, they had continuations going downfield, so they were able to get vertical as well as horizontal field position off that movement. So a pull play design from the Swiss. Finally frees a cutter on this near side, Göttinger. Throws a little bit low, just about reeled in by Cerul. Snagging that one with two hands now, working towards this near sideline. Göttinger has it once more. Swings low, really nice hand scooped up by Cerul. Working towards the end zone, getting the disc in flow, in motion, shooting towards the back corner. Tried to be towed in bounds, didn't see from this angle whether she could, and it doesn't look like she was able to, so the Poles are going to get another break chance.
Really nice grit there from the Swiss team. A couple of throws going a bit awry, but clearly the mental headspace and the focus to get hands on those discs no matter what. I wonder if they do any sort of flutterguts training where they're sort of catching discs at funny angles and funny heights as we see this replay.
It was very tight and was called out, and they didn't dispute that. So this Polish D-line offense can't convert. The throw a little bit too hot to handle for Popek. Hauser runs towards the disc, trying to get it back in play quickly. Maya. Very concerted effort, just use these small little spaces, continue to get the disc going up line, and they find Hauser often throwing the goal, scoring one there, tied back up at 6 apiece. Neither side really able to pull away in this game.
Great movement there from the Swiss team. I think a thing that they're doing really well is timing their cuts off each other. They're not necessarily huge cuts, they're often quite small handler movements, reset cuts, up the line cuts, but when someone catches the disc, there's always at least one, if not two, other players who are actively moving to be ready to receive the next disc. So the handlers are never static looking for who next. Great timing, great communication, clearly a team that knows each other quite well.
So 6 apiece at the end of this first half, coming in very close, being played at a pretty good pace, still about just over 35 minutes in. Games played to 100 minutes or first to 15. The teams play at this pace will almost certainly reach the score cap before then. There is a 7-minute half-time incorporated into that as well, which is most welcome in this weather. There's a tent that's been erected on the far side of the field now as well, which is welcome shelter.
And also worth pointing out that these squads are relatively small. It looks like we've got 18 women rostered for Switzerland and 20 for Poland, which is smaller than a lot of club teams that you might see, particularly for a week-long tournament. We might see both a bit of physical tiredness, but also quite a lot of heat tiredness from these players.
Yeah, the coaches definitely were making an effort to make sure they use the full depth of the roster, especially early on in the week, when not that the games aren't necessarily as important because you've still got a good chance in making the bracket with this current format. Now Siebert's looking deep for the back corner, but a little bit overshot. Tried to find Wiedeker. It was just too far out in front.
A nice defense there from Bambula Daida. I think she was the one with that slightly errant throw just there, and she had that fire to focus on getting that disc back on defense.
Little inside forehand to start. Now Abdullah has it on this near sideline, fakes the backhand, looking downfield, turns, isolates the reset, little lead forehand. Gets the disc going downfield, and now shooting for Dull, looking deep, but there's going to be a number of players underneath. Well read by Dull. Always had eyes on it, got herself in position nice and early. Brought it down very comfortably, Mela. Swings to Bamboo Wadida. Again, the red zone possession looking a little bit muddled. Nice isolation there towards the far sideline. And a raking backhand all the way across the field. What a beautiful throw from the Poles.
I think the Polish team did an amazing job in that point of recognizing which side of the pitch is the slight high side. When we say high side, we usually mean the side from which it's easier to throw longer throws. Because if the wind is coming towards the camera, if you throw from that far side, the wind is more likely to take the disc towards this side. So this cross-pitch throw that we see right here, really well weighted, not to fly out of bounds with that disc, but if you tried to throw that throw from the side closest to the camera to the side furthest away, arguably a much harder throw because you're going into the wind. Likewise with the long throw that we saw earlier in that point, the receiver just had so much advantage because she was on the low side compared to her. At the point she caught it 3 defenders, which meant that she had the easier read on the disc. The disc was always going to be floating towards her, and she just had the advantage to catch it. So great job by the Polish throwers to take advantage of that slight cross breeze, to be putting both of those discs to places where their offenders had the best chance of catching them.
Yeah, and getting the throw out nice and early as well, giving them a chance to get an early read on the disc rather than shooting it later in the stall count when there's already traffic downfield. So the Swiss catch the ball, centering pass goes to Hauser, and we're back underway.
Poles coming out with a match defense here. Despite the fact that the Swiss are going into the wind, they're counting on their person match defense to put pressure on them.
Oh, and Dull very nearly does exactly that. Still getting tight, but not quite tight enough. And now a shot into the end zone. Blades a little bit first, but very well caught by Veronique Meyer.
Love to go back to that point and count how many stall counts we think happened on the Swiss team there. I'm not sure any of them got to more than 2. Really fast throwing, fast catching and receiving, and there's those cuts immediately ready, particularly on that last throw to get it right around that closing in mark, and that it had to go that early in order to get there, and it did.
Yeah, would have maybe liked on the execution to see it go slightly further in front, so she didn't quite have to adjust and get into that awkward body position, but did very well to get hands into that position and make sure that she maintained possession with the disc on landing. We're going to have a timeout here, tied at 7 apiece, because going into a galaxy point situation now, sudden death to take half, and this is very important for Switzerland to earn their break back, because the Poles have that two-for-none opportunity now where they get, if they score here, they'll get the disc after half-time and 2 possessions without the Swiss getting the disc, and that would open up a 2-point advantage. So really neat. So it's 2 timeouts to use per half. May as well take one here, make sure we know exactly what we're doing for this point.
And it is, yeah, the score may look tied, but yeah, there's a slight advantage of having the disc on offense after the halftime. So while it may look tight, it's actually potentially, you could say, half a point advantage.
I'm interested to see what lines these teams put on, whether they go with strict O or D lines or whether they go with more of a power line, cross some players over. Just having a little replay of that last Swiss offense. Just as you mentioned, Joe, really quick disc movement, 1, 2, and then go, and cutters moves you mentioned as well, moving nice and early, getting into space, and here's that final shot. Bladed a little bit, but it was really good adjustment.
Yeah, great effort there to catch it, although particularly on this turf, hitting the ground can be not only hard, but also leave some pretty painful turf burns.
I've been reliably informed, though, that people dig scars. I think that's like, I think everyone agrees that the little bit of scars are cool, right?
Particularly in places where ultimate players get scars. So you got the back of the elbow, down the shin, and across the hips. It's definitely the
the hip burns.
Most attractive scar locations.
So the pull goes out from Switzerland. Oh, and dropped.
And that was, the wind really picked up during that pull as well. I think it's really great and aggressive when handlers try to catch the pull. It's always something you want to do, but sometimes it can backfire.
And backfire it does. 1 pass into the end zone. Veronique Meyer with the goal again. Brutal stuff for Poland. You could really see the disc pick up speed. Those backhand blading pulls are often a popular choice in this wind, and Wronska just couldn't handle it. And Switzerland devastatingly quick, capitalizing on that. I agree with you, it was the right thing to do to catch the pull. There's so many benefits to getting your offense moving quickly, but that's the inherent risk with it.
100%, and catching the pull can arguably be one of the hardest things to practice, because it's one thing to have the skill to do it, but it's another thing to do it under pressure in a galaxy point situation with unexpected wind. The mental toughness of being that primary handler, catching that disc, is a hard thing to practice, but hopefully the Polish team can get it back together, rally around that handler, say, you did the right thing, we're behind you on that choice. You know, sometimes it happens, doesn't matter, we're still coming into this half. It's 8-7, but essentially we come out on offense and we have the chance to take it back.
Yeah, so the Swiss bring it back on serve with that break on Galaxy Point. Both teams will have a little bit of time to get some water on, get into the shade. We're going to do the same. Make sure we stay hydrated. Make sure you stay hydrated wherever you are watching at home, and we'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to coverage of EUC, the European Ultimate Championships 2019, live from Győr in Hungary. Benji Rees, how can I get my own name wrong, blimey? Benji Rees alongside Joanna Hamer. You're seeing there our schedule for what we've got coming up later in the day. Next up, you're going to the Stadium Field to do Finland, Switzerland in the mixed division. In this pitch, we've got Slovenia versus Norway, two up-and-coming young programs. And then we've got Italy versus Russia in the men's division in the stadium, Spain versus Poland in the men's division on this pitch. Women's power pool action in this pitch before, as well as Sweden versus Switzerland in the stadium, and last round of the day, which you can't quite see on there. This pitch is going to have Austria versus the Netherlands from the men's division, whereas Great Britain versus Sweden in the mixed division is happening in the stadium. So plenty of action to come, and you can watch it all on fanseat.com. The stadium pitch is being streamed exclusively on Fanseat, or you can join us here on the party pitch, the AstroTurf of Field 2, which are being broadcast as well as on Fanseat, live on the EUF Facebook page and YouTube channel. So if you are watching, hello, welcome. Thank you very much for joining myself, Benjamin Rees, alongside Joanna Hamer here in Hungary, getting back underway for the second half of this women's pool play matchup. Pool B, Poland and Switzerland both one-on-one in the standings so far, looking to take one of those top two positions. What are you expecting to see in this second half, Joe?
I think it would be really nice to see a little bit more of each of those teams' zones. I think we saw each team doing quite respectively well on their offense against zones, but sometimes that's how it works with zones. Sometimes it takes a few points of playing it to settle into how exactly that zone is going to work. So it would be really neat to see both of those teams adjusting and putting on some really strong defense.
Yeah, see how they can maybe bait those throws that at one point were available and switch that zone ever so slightly to close windows where before they weren't there. Poles trying to look for a deep shot to open up the second half, and the defender made sure that the Polish defender got too far underneath that, didn't trust her own read enough.
Yeah, I really like that defensive play. It looked like a bit of a potentially a pull play from the Polish team there. A side stack with one deep cutter, which I like that as a look, as an isolation. But the defender there did a really great job of going up early, drawing her offender with her, making her miss that disc.
Yeah, just suckered her in a little bit, and now Switzerland can open up their first 2-point advantage of the game with a break here. Just about squeezing that one through. Steiner has it on the far sideline. Getting trapped, very active force, tries to get the lead throw, but Dull gobbles that one up, was always in position to snatch that away, but on a high stall, the throw had to go. Bambua Dida now looking for an option downfield, finds Baim. Bambua Dida going every other on this possession. So comfortable with the disc in their hands. Bronska makes the up line cut, but the throw instead is going to roll with a beautiful shot across the end zone. She's so comfortable throwing that throw. We saw one on the backhand side in the first half. This time, the flick finds the intended target.
Some great defense by the Polish O-line there. We talk a lot about D-line offense once you've gotten that turnover, trying to convert it in, but I think it's equally important to talk about O-line defense. Obviously, your O-line never wants to turn. You don't want to have to play D, but if you do, you want to put the kind of pressure on that the Polish O-line put on there, smothering those handler cuts and getting a clean catch interception.
That's something you see more and more teams do now, is they'll bring some of those bigger, more explosive athletes onto the O-line, knowing that, okay, we might have a higher chance of turning over, but if we do turn over, then we're not going to be as exposed on the defensive positioning and the defensive speed. An example of a great athlete playing on the O-line there, Paulina Dull, snatching that one, and this was a beautiful throw from Bambua Dida right into the path of Daria Ryczkowska. So Switzerland have their first O-line of the second half. Zone once more and just overthrown a little, but it was enough to make sure that the receiver couldn't get a hand on it. Kanapik finds an option, and now they're working downfield. Gorostiza just towards the far sideline, finds Popek, working it down the far channel. Another big roll curving shot across the end zone, right on the money once more. They need to do a much better job of keeping the force. These are round breaks are killing the Swiss at the moment, and it's a a hold and then a break to start the second half for Poland. 9-8 they lead.
Yeah, double punch there. There's no better way to start a half than coming out with 2 points in a row. And I'll agree, the Polish team there is so good at these cross the end zone shots. And I think you were mentioning earlier in the game that teams seem to be working it quite well down the pitch, and then when they got into the end zone, getting quite flustered and stuck when they get really close. And that's an amazing way to break out of that. If you're standing on one side of the end zone line, you're looking right in front of you, that's a very small piece of the field you're looking at. But if you can suddenly look across the end zone, the other side of the end zone, you've more than tripled the amount of pitch you're looking at. If you can get that big wide swing across, sometimes the defense aren't expecting it and you can put it in.
Well, something my coach at university and part of our camera crew as well, Felix, always talks about is inward pivoting. If you've got the disc right on that sideline, you're looking downfield. Half of your field of vision is off the pitch, and that's not really a useful space to you. So just squaring up slightly, looking in towards the pitch means you've got a much larger field of vision, so much more spaces that you can hit. So more zone from the Poles. But the Swiss looking pretty comfortable with it so far, just happy pinging the disc around the back. And that throw a little bit low prevents the jailbreak somewhat, but they do find a nice more gaining pass to Hauser. She's going to shoot for the end zone. Good thing has had a good game so far, and she adds to that with another goal there, tied back up at 9s.
Super well done from the Swiss O-line there to hold convincingly, I think. One low pass saved, but really punching one in, making it quite quick, demonstrating to their D-line, you know what, we've got this. We may have been broken, but we're a strong O-line. We can definitely put it in, stemming that 2-point run from Poland and bringing it back to a more even score.
And we've seen this a couple of times in this game. Both sides keeping it very close, never more than 2 points out in front. So it's nice to see a very tight contest, and it wouldn't surprise me if we saw these two teams perhaps match up again in the bracket later on in the tournament, such as the level between these two sides. Very high quality game. So elsewhere in this pool, we mentioned it's Russia and Sweden. That game's currently taking place on the stadium pitch. Russia currently 10-5 to the good, so in prime position here to top the pool.
And is it 15 women's teams here at this
15,
tournament?
so 3 pools of 4 and 1 pool of 3. The top 2 teams from each pool, plus the 2 best third place games, go into 2 top power pools of 5. The other 5 teams go into a lower pool of 5, with everyone except the bottom team of the bottom pool getting a chance to cross back upwards. So it's not that these games don't matter, but you're not knocked out with losses here. You're still alive in the tournament, and that's why you may see teams play with a little bit more freedom, maybe try some strategies, get a chance to work some things out, play slightly wider lines, especially with a long week and hot weather.
And to get to know the other teams as well. You mentioned that these two teams might well face each other later in the pools, and if they can get to know each other at this point, they'll have an advantage coming in later on. We see an amazing D right there.
Yeah, the pressure was tight. Kostvik would have backed us up to bring it in. It was a nice put from Dull, who's had a good game both defensively and putting it deep in the Poles. Get the disc back almost instantaneously. Magdalena Mela gets it, and Gavlikovska rushes towards the disc. Nice underneath, finds Dull. It's a body behind it. It's now in 2 hands. Looking downfield, turns, isolates the reset. Instead, finds a cutter coming underneath in Mela. Dull takes up line, throw goes off nice and early. He's going to sit for a little bit, but not a problem at all. For Dull, did not sit long enough to let a poach defender come in, and she reaches and snatches it out of the sky with that right hand, and the advantage opens up once more for Poland at 10-9.
So impressive watching these athletes, and hopefully you can see it on the great stream from home, but you can see the intensity and the seriousness and the intent with which they go for these defensive blocks. You can see them coming. You can see the disc goes up in the defense. By their facial expression, by their whole movement, you can just tell that they're going up for it as well. Amazing defensive pressure for both teams in that point, but Poland closing it out with this great shot.
Yeah, and we mentioned a bit earlier that Paulina Dull is one of these players who's going to be taking her place on the Eurostars tour across the States later this summer, and I'm very excited to see her performance there. She's had an excellent game here, and she's shown why she's such a big force for this Polish side, both internationally and playing on the club level as well.
It's great to get even more footage of female athletes and be able to watch even more women's play and watch international matchup as well. Players who might not be playing each other in typical matchups, getting to see sort of what it shows for the best of Europe to be playing against the best of the US.
And I'll try and endeavour to stay up late, but especially for the West Coast games, I may just have to watch them back on demand.
I'm sure they'll forgive you.
So Hauser with the backhand through, watches it all the way towards the far sideline. Niederhauser working it very quickly. They love this little jailbreak give-go style on the end zone line, just dishing back and forwards, and so nonchalant that score, almost like it didn't matter that they were in the end zone, just someone was open, so let's give it to them, and tied back up at 10 apiece. This is so quick, this game, Joe.
You had the feeling that that offense could just keep doing that forever. You almost felt like they might walk it back down the other end and then back up and score again just to show that they could. The Polish zone doing a great job of putting a lot of pressure on there, but really not phasing the Swiss at all.
Yeah, the wind's dipped a little bit from where it was earlier today, and especially compared to yesterday. So it'll be interesting to see how long these teams stick with zones and whether they just maybe whether they maybe transition into going one-on-one, or maybe just alter things up a little bit ever so slightly.
Although, as we say that, the wind's picking up a little bit right now, so this pitch has been really on and off throughout the weekend in terms of strong wind and then no wind and then blustery wind. So really hard for the teams to predict what is happening. A thing that we saw a lot yesterday, which I appreciated, was during halftime, the teams foregoing sitting in the shade to get out on the pitch and throw to try to adjust to the conditions. During this halftime, we mostly saw players take advantage of the shade, but as we see from the throwing prowess on both teams, not really a need to practice much more.
So not faced by the drop pull in the first half, catching the disc there, but overthrown a little bit, couldn't adjust, and now the Swiss can retake the lead, dishing it forward. Lunzmann has the disc back in her hands, trying to find an option on this line. I think maybe she pulled out of the cut, saw another cutter coming into that space, and it gives the Poles the disc back, and they're moving it quickly. Dual swings, it's going to pop up though. A great field position now for Switzerland to retake the lead.
Just goes over the head of Galikowska there. An unfortunate, potentially wind-affected throw.
So Linnea Siebert finds a player towing the line at the front of the end zone, Cyril, and the Swiss back in front once more, 11-10. This game swinging back and forth like a pendulum, still not entirely sure where it's going to stop.
Now, great celebration there from the Swiss as well. Nice to see the high fives between the two teams. Lots of respect, clearly, back and forth. But you almost feel like what might make the difference with this game, because we've got so many swings back and forth, you want to keep that momentum. It might be the energy that comes from the teams. So the way they celebrate their goals, the way they still pick up their teammates and celebrate if they get scored on, having that team energy to carry forward the momentum from a break or a score into the next one might be one of the deciding factors.
So we'll see the Poles changing some players over for this line, making sure they've got fresh legs on every point. Very important in this hot weather to make sure that you're really using the full depth of the roster. And I know it's something that we've mentioned on a number of occasions, but certainly this heat is going to be a deciding factor in some games this week. Already about 30 degrees, and we're only at 20 past 10 in the morning, so stay cool. It's a hot one out there. Certainly, I'm very, very happy that we've got a little bit of shade and shelter. We've taped up some parasols, and it's a little bit ramshackle, but almost wouldn't have it any other way.
Let's go, team!
So this Polish offense coming back into the field, going downwind. Dual claps her hands, wants the underneath. Doing a very good job of getting active and around on the mark to stop that throw going. At the moment, just swinging around the back. Everything very congested, using not much depth of the field. Dahl begins to take off deep. The throw goes to her. Is it going to roll back in bounds? It does. Nicely snagged. Looks at the end zone, tries to isolate the receiver. Play's going to come up line. Travel called, resets her feet on that sideline. Dahl with a high release flick, shooting for the far side of the end zone. Beautiful throw and really well read by Antonina Tatai.
Love that throw. That was so nice. Both the first throw there that Dahl caught expertly inbounds, and then that flick to find the other side of the end zone. Potentially a bit frustrating there. That travel call happened just at the time when she had a free player streaking into the end zone that she could have hit, but unfazed by that, takes it as not a problem. Looks back across the pitch and takes that flick.
I must admit I was a little surprised that this shot to Dahl went. She was already quite close to the sideline and the disc went down that channel, so it didn't give a huge margin for error, but it was well thrown. It was a nice roll curve on that to bring it back in bounds. Caught it nice and early, and then, as you mentioned, kept her patient, reset her feet, and a beautiful high release flick across the end zone, just sitting it on the wind, and well read by Tatai. And we're tied back up at 11s.
This feels like it must be a conscious tactic by the Poles to really pay attention to the full width of the end zone and think about these swings and unorthodox cross-pitch throws as much as possible. I think a lot of teams do get stuck sort of in that corner, and the most traditional thing to do is dump, swing, and try to attack that far side, but that takes a few throws, takes a bit of time. Defenders are used to defending against that. If you're throwing an unusual, immediate cross-pitch for the goal throw, not a lot of teams will have focused on defending against that, as we see an awesome layout to save possession.
Great play by Maya, who's had a few already this game, and you mentioned sometimes that little bit of creativity to unlock the space in the end zone. Sometimes, obviously, it's you playing nice, patient dump swing offense is all well and good, but it can be easy to get frustrated, and sometimes just throwing a little bit of flair and getting it in the end zone is not a bad idea. So still count rising, eventually isolating a reset, and now swinging around the back. A little bit of a gainer to Hauser there into the center of the pitch. They find a player wide open, number 44, Palms. Has the goal, little punch spike down to the ground as well. Switzerland retake a 12-11 lead. Very tight still in this game. Would not want to call it, at least I wouldn't want to call a winner, certainly. I'm enjoying calling the game from the booth.
Definitely. I loved, from the Swiss offense there, a few of those throws I think we saw go perhaps a little bit further than expected beyond the arms of the receiver, or perhaps just to the left or the right, but the amount of spin that you could see on those throws, the way they hung in the air gave their receiver the extra time it took to change direction and catch it. If you want to move the disc really quickly, sometimes you might be not exactly on target, but if you're putting the level of spin that these Swiss offensive players are putting on the disc, it doesn't matter too much because your receiver will have time to adjust and catch it. So making up for a slight not quite on the mark throws with a level of spin makes you much faster in that zone offense and gives you an advantage.
Yeah, really getting the torque through the wrist, getting all the revolutions on that disc, and it eventually wound its way into the arms of Harms for the goal. So 12-11 to Switzerland, halfway through the second half. Still only 70 minutes or so on the clock, and games to 100 minutes this weekend, so plenty of time left in this game. We're going to go all the way to 15. Mela fields the ball and is going to begin the possession with a centering pass to Bamboo Wadida. Here's Dahl, cutter goes deep, pivots out for the inside-out backhand. What a beautiful throw to the back of the end zone, but just off the left hand, and Tatai looks frustrated with herself as she runs into the goal netting. Was a beautiful put, pivoted out, lovely, voluptuous inside-out shape, but just couldn't quite reel it in. The disc a little bit too hot to handle. Seeing it again on the replay. Got a full hand to it, but could only mack it slightly further on. Couldn't get those fingers closed in time, Joe.
Potentially thinking about where the back of the end zone line is there. Quite a few lines on this pitch, and she was quite close to being out the back.
So the Swiss offense working against a wind that's beginning to whip up a little more now. Underneath pass goes. Göttinger finds an option underneath. Lehmann breaks around, finds Lastuvka. Had a couple of nice defensive plays in this game. The throw pops up. It's caught at the second attempt by Bambu Adida. Zul fakes the underneath, takes the swing to this sideline. Via Babe finds downfield, but another great defensive play from Erika Lastuvka.
Yeah, lots of fight in that play. In a game this tight, you really want to see those kind of plays. Watching your teammates put it all on the line hypes the whole team up and gives this offense something to work with now.
So looking for a lead throw down the line. It floats, but it's nicely read and well reeled in by Lehmann. Göttinger finds an option down line. Shot into the end zone. Defenders there, but trailing the play. Switzerland take their first 2-point lead of the game on that end zone grab by Phoebe Chambord. 13-11 now, the Swiss lead.
You can see some of the tired faces of the Swiss line there, definitely having put their all into that point, but so excited with the result. It was very little separation between those two players and the disc went up, but the Swiss offensive player just really took it and went for it and caught that grab.
See an excellent replay there of that, fantastically by Lastuvka. He saw that underneath going, was able to change direction, get in front of the player and make that bid, and then you see just that closing speed from Chambord. A nice take as well with the right hand, and Polish taking one of the 2 timeouts they have in this second half now. A little bit rocked, facing their first 2-point deficit of the game. We've seen them string together a few points on the bounce already, but they're going to have to do it now if they want to come back and win this game.
And a 2-point differential at 13-11 is feels a lot bigger than a 2-point differential at, say, 7-5 or something like that, because we're only 2 points from the 15 score cap, and it's just win by 1, it's not win by 2, so the first team to reach 15 will take this game. So the Polish here definitely thinking, how do we get that 2-3 points that we need immediately on the go? What is it going to take for us to have an O-line hold and then ramp ourselves up for a D-line break?
So 13-11, a little over 70 minutes gone in this game, so still just under half an hour until the time cap, but we're definitely not going to get there at the quality and speed at which these sides are playing. 13-11 in this women's pool play matchup from Pool WB, the women's Pool B. Benji Rees alongside Joanna Haming, bringing you the exciting conclusion of this game live here on Fancy and on the EUF Facebook page and YouTube channel. Wherever you're watching, thank you for tuning in. Hopefully you're enjoying our coverage. There's so much more to come. Still very early on in the week. There's just, so far, I think this has to be the best game we've broadcast so far this week.
I think it would, in terms of closeness of score, it's quite good. Although if you haven't gone back and watched the Russia-Germany mixed game that we streamed first, I'd definitely try to catch that one. The score went back and forth quite a lot, quite a game of runs as well. I won't tell you the final score in case you haven't seen it, but I will say definitely check it out.
That's another one I will circle in my list to watch on demand.
I believe it was on pitch 1, so it's a Fanseat game, so you'll have to log into Fanseat to read that one.
Players and crew coming up with very creative ways to try and beat the heat. I've seen the socks and sandals does not look I particularly rock, but the cardboard in the sandals to prevent your feet getting sunburned is an interesting one. I mean, stylistically, I don't think it's necessarily high fashion, but
anything to keep your feet from getting burnt, I will take that.
Yeah, that is something I have seen too many players with very unattractive sandal tans.
Scars, attractive. Sandal tan, stay away.
Bit less so, yeah. So the Polish O-line trying to reduce this deficit. Pawlikowska, throw is low. Dull goes to ground, can't scoop it up off the turf. So another break chance here for Switzerland. Muscles away, past the defender. Dusirul puts it deep, defender's gonna close. Chambord gets the disc once more, but is she in bounds or not? Switzerland celebrate, was very close to that back line of the end zone. Seeing it again now on the replay.
Hard to tell from that angle, and there are 3 lines back there. I believe the first one?
So the first line, I think, is the 6-yard box from in the penalty area, and then you've got the back line, and then you've got the goal line, which isn't part of the pitch. So they're deciding that she was just about in bounds there. I think from the replay we saw, I think that's what it looked like to me. And both teams are happy with that result. So the goal will stand. Another deep reception, another deep break for Phoebe Chambord. She caught the previous point, and she caught that one as well. Been devastating as a deep cutter for Switzerland, and now a 3-point lead, the largest for either side this game. Switzerland looking to close this game out strong.
That's an absolutely massive point. That was a must-win there for Poland, and despite the offense's best efforts of being chilly, we saw a wayward pass go that the Swiss were definitely putting on pressure, but that pass itself wasn't particularly pressured, and I know the Polish player will want that one back because Switzerland now within game point. Poland looking at trying to get 4 points in a row to win this game. We put a lot of pressure here on the O-line to try and close out this hold, and Switzerland have put themselves in a great place to take this game.
We've got a great shot there as well of cameraman Edgar's new cardboard sandals, which I'm sure will be all the rage in hitting shops very soon. That ball lands inbounds, rolls out of bounds. Marching towards the disc, Eva Bambua-Dida.
Seeing mostly the same O-line coming out again, and just saying, you know, we might have gotten broken just then, but you know what, doesn't matter, we have trust in ourselves, we know we can do it.
Yeah, went to brick it, but it landed in bounds, so she takes her rightful place, bringing the disc in from the sideline. Dahl gets the disc, pivots out, launches another backhand deep. Bambua-Dida's the intended target. The throw is just too far out in front.
Oh, unfortunate to see that one slightly go. I love that call. She really got open deep on her player there, and there was a lot of calls of help from the sideline, really making sure to get 2 Swiss players under that, but in fact it wasn't the defensive player, it was the wind that was the defense there.
Yeah, just could have done with taking something a little off that one. It was not very far away at all, but a touch too far, and Switzerland now with the disc in their possession and a chance to break to win this game. Just about sneaks that one past the poaching defender, thinks about the deep shot, doesn't like that option though. Going to take it at the second time of asking, looking for Listuvka, makes the catch, now shooting into the end zone, the throw's going to sit, does make the catch, not quite in there just yet, dishes the disc back to Sieber, shot for goal, and they've got the break and the win.
Oh, that's amazing. You might not necessarily know from the stream, but the wind really did pick up right in that last possession on Switzerland, but them really proving it doesn't matter to them. You know what, we'll go upwind, we'll go the full length of the field to get this last point, to get this win. Amazing into the wind shots, amazing calm. Switzerland take that last point, and I think based on their performance in those last 3 points, they really deserve that win.
Yeah, it was very tight, and then eventually Switzerland got 4-5 in the row to end the game, just finishing on a tear, really strong, great performance from them. The Poles put up a valiant fight and just faltered in the end, maybe just looked a little bit tired, wilting in the heat a little bit. Both of these teams will look to take that result into their later pool game, their later second pool games today, but that's going to bring a wrap up to our first game of the day. Thank you very much for watching. Do stay tuned to fancy.com and the EUF channels, because coming up in our next round of games on this pitch, Steph Rapazzo and Hannah Pendlebury will be bringing you mixed division action between Slovenia and Norway. Joe is going to be joined by Ravi in the stadium for Finland versus Switzerland from the mixed division. So I have been Benjamin Rees.
And I've been Joanna Hamer.
And we will see you on the other side.
T.TV.